Hi, this is Alicia Bowling with Creative Laughter TV Beyond Logic podcast. Today our guest is a psychic medium who says psychics are like hairdressers. You have to find the right style, the right fit that works for you. It's my pleasure to welcome Shiro to the show. Hi, Shiro.
Hi, Alicia.
Oh, I'm super excited to interview you. So it's very unusual. You're Japanese, you're from Japan, but you actually weren't born there. You were born in Germany. So I'm curious to see how growing up in all these different places with all these different beliefs, because if I'm correct, like the Japanese don't believe in really psychic mediums. They have feng shui and they have a different way of praying. So I'm curious to see how you were growing up and what that was like for you.
Well, in our family, religion wasn't very much of a theme until we migrated to the United States and my mother became a born-again Christian when I was about 12 or 13. And so until then, there was really no acknowledgement of spirituality or God. We go to the temples on New Year's, and, there was a mix of the shrine and temples because Buddhism and Shintoism was both pretty much the dominant religion in Japan. And nobody really knew the difference. They are two distinct different religions, but it was more of a cultural ritual instead of any kind of expression of spiritual belief. And so I just never really had any input or conversations within the family about it until I had come into my own sense of spirituality, which started with my being a born-again Christian in my early teens.
Oh, interesting. So what was it that, happened to you that made you go, oh, whoa, I'm different? Or why am I feeling that? Or why am I seeing that? Did something like that happen to you? That was kind of like an awakening?
Yeah, when I was I went to the church. I was in high school. My friend, I was into drugs, and I was in a rock and roll band back in high school already, and I had already decided to become a musician for as a professional, and I was, but along with that came with the rock and roll lifestyle, the partying and the drugs and all that. And a friend of mine had invited me to a Bible study. And I was like, we were supposed to be in a band together. So I was like, I didn't understand why. But we ended up going to a Bible study and met a lot of people that was very different than people from my mom's church. And it was just nice to be accepted and loved. And just there was a lot of support. And so I became, a quote unquote born-again Christian at that time and played in a Christian rock band. And so we were in a ministry, and the nature of the band was to reach out to the homeless and a lot of the runaways in Hollywood. And so I found myself being in the position of counselor. And as I was counseling, I would notice that I would get, insights or advice or just an awareness of the person's background and what they were going through. And, at that time, when you're in the church, you sort of pretty much attribute everything to the Holy Spirit or God. And so, if you get any kind of intuitive sense, you just say, oh, the Spirit put it on my heart to tell you this. So it was a very natural process. I just never realized that it was sixth sense at work or that it was intuition. You're not allowed to acknowledge anything for your own as your own attribute. So it was just something that I did and something that was commonly accepted, but it had to be attributed to the Holy Spirit or God or something like that. You couldn't say that it was your own intuition or instinct, because then that would fall into the category of psychics or anything, other than Christianity. And so I didn't attribute it to my own ability until I stepped away from the church.
And so what was that like for you?
I always had an inherent question, about just the dogmatic aspect of the religion. I went to Japan with a record deal I had in Japan when I was 25. So I kind of went back to Japan and lived there and worked as a professional musician there for 13 years, and just saw, that less than 3% of Japanese population is Christian. So I had to really, really question the way God works, because I saw a lot of God and spiritual, experiences in Japan that was outside of the church. So it really, really forced me to think that God was bigger than religion. And I think that that's when I began to really start to see that, God was still very much part of my life, that I was still being intuitively or spiritually guided. And I had encountered a lot of various experiences where I was counseling again, just, in my own life where people would come to me. I just always had people coming to me asking me for advice, and I didn't know why. I loved doing it, but I just didn't know why. And every time I would engage, I would notice that I would see stuff behind the scenes of their lives that I wouldn't normally see, or that nothing that they had mentioned in the conversation. And, people would be surprised, like, well, how did you know that? And, and I never really knew what that was all about. I just thought, I guess I'm just still being guided by the Spirit, even though I'm not in the church anymore. I just always still acknowledged it until I had met my wife, who had my current wife, who was an energy healer. When I met her, she was the first one to tell me that I had a gift. And it was, a language that was outside of, religion. And that's when I kind of started to really explore all that, the aspect of sixth sense in human being.
Well, you have said something very interesting, because most psychic mediums say the mediumship is first and the psychic secondary, but you say that the psychicness is first and the mediumship is secondary. And I find that really fascinating. And why is that?
I really don't know. I think that perhaps because my sole purpose in this incarnation was to really work and, to serve people through counsel and teaching, because I am definitely more interested in counseling and teaching and finding solutions for people. And mediumship was definitely something that I experienced as I stepped into the awareness that this is something that I have and something that I can nurture, that sixth sense and intuition isn't just about one category, that it's all aspects. And for me to just hone into what is my specialty, what is it that I can do. And so mediumship definitely came as I started to meditate with my wife and started to kind of explore, and I started hearing her dad's voice or seeing a message from him that I needed to relay. And that's when I started to realize that I was actually being in contact with someone that passed over. And so, that was the first time I've actually mediated for someone. And until then, it was always about counsel. And to this day, I think my passion is still about counseling. So my mediumship is definitely as used as a part of the grand solution that I provide for the clients during the reading.
Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, that shows great value for the kids or for whoever you're counseling to be able to have that insight information into their soul, which is really interesting. So I know that when you started, you pretty much, people kept coming to you because they're like, whoa, you're right. And then and they kept recommending people. And that's kind of how you built your business, just on this word of mouth.
Yes.
From seeing these people, which that's pretty cool. But I know that, your readings work differently than other people. So tell everybody how that happens. How exactly do you prepare people for your readings?
Yeah, it's funny because for me, because I didn't have that conscious awareness until, late in my life. And I still, to this day, usually in my daily life, I don't feel psychic, or I don't really carry it around on my shoulders or anything. But when I actually engage, when I actually ask for the Spirit to just guide me and to help every client, something kicks in and a word starts flowing out of my mouth. And, the way I usually do in my session is I just establish a connection. I get to know the client. I just ask general questions. Oftentimes I realize that even the questions that I ask, because sometimes I don't even know why I'm asking certain questions. I realize that even having the client answer certain questions for themselves are very intuitively guided as well. And so I'll just go through general questions about career and family. And then once I feel that I've established a connection with the client, then I kind of, ask them what are their, primary questions. If they are just coming in to just get a general reading, then I start looking at the family members' names that I write down and or career, about their career. And I just start focusing on the things that I wrote down on my notes. And then I start getting information. And
you had referred, excuse me a second, because this is funny. I mean, you refer to, psychics as hairdressers. Because you have to find the right fit, the right style. And I think that is so funny.
Absolutely.
Tell everybody about that.
Yeah. I always send an introductory email to everyone who's interested in getting a reading, explaining that, not every psychic is the same. And just because one psychic is really known to be, great or great reviews or whatever, doesn't mean that he's right or he or she is right for you. Meaning that, just like there are a lot of great musicians, a lot of great bands, but not everybody likes one band. I mean, everybody has their own choice of music. And I think the best way, because I did work with hairdressers in one time in my life, or, when I was in corporate, and I worked with in the hair industry, and I worked with stylists, and stylists often tell me that they're often the counselors for their clients. And I thought that was really interesting. And so, I really felt like it's the same process. There are a lot of great hairstylists out there, but not everybody is going to be the right fit for you. There's a certain way they talk, or the way they cut, or the way they are. That it's a chemistry thing, and how you find the right hairstylist is the similar process in how you find the right counsel for you.
It's true, because I've sent people to a psychic, the same psychic. One person will say, "Oh my God, I love them. They were the best." The other one goes, I didn't feel it all. They were totally wrong. You know what I mean? So that's why I love this. And nobody has described it like this, but it's true.
It is very true.
Oh my God. Yes. If I have to go to a different hair colors because mine's sick, I almost have a panic attack. You know what I mean? Because I ventured out once and they did such a shitty job on my hair. I'm like paralyzed now. If she's not there, I will go with dark roots before I will ever go back to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So that's funny.
Yeah, because it is a very personal connection. Whenever you have a reading, you do connect with each other on a very deep level, on an energetic level. The psychic or whoever is reading you is tapping into your energetic field, and is, I describe that even our guides, talks amongst each other and relay messages, so it's a very collaborative process. And so I do recommend for everyone to find, and the best way to find it is whatever resonates with you, whether the feel of the person's picture, or the way they talk, or the way they write their emails, or how they, word things, everything has a certain trigger. And so, look for those things that resonate with you, because in the end, whatever you're taking home from any reading is what you're resonating with. If you don't agree, or if you don't resonate with the person, then it's not yours to take home. So finding the right match and feeling the chemistry is a very mutual process.
Right. Well, you use the term process and discovery in your readings. What does that mean?
I think that it definitely primarily evolves around the future projections. A lot of times they seek out intuitive counsel because they want to know what's going to happen, where they're headed. And, I understand that, when we understand time, we think about linear time, but we know that time exists just only to the now and the present, and all potential futures do exist. And whatever choices we make, leads to one potential future to another. And so when I get future projections, I always recognize, and I always have to confirm with my spirit guide that is it an information that I should share or not? Because some informations are not meant to be shared, because not knowing the future doesn't always benefit the client. So when I don't get the answer, or when I'm told not to share, I do have to explain to the client that, it's because the process of the discovery of how the future unfolds, even if it's a knowing boy or girl for your next, upcoming childbirth, or whether you're going to get into this university or not, sometimes the whole process of anticipation or discovery is part of that person's very precious learning experience or growing experience. And knowing something ahead doesn't always benefit. And so I do need to explain that the process of discovery is very important to our lives.
Yeah, I know. I love when you say, it's not in your best interest to know if he's going to ask you to marry you right now, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, some
it does
things
take
are
away
great
from the
when
surprise.
you're surprised. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But we're so impatient.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, we
and
are.
we want to know things right now, and we want them to know them the way we want to know them. So
yes.
I always say a lot of times when people talk, I had a conversation with somebody once, and boy, I tell you, she did not hear what I said at all. Like, she totally turned it around. I was like, did we have the same conversation? People hear what they want to hear. So I think the prediction thing, you do have to be careful with, in a way, because people are going to interpret them the way they choose.
Yes, that's true. I mean, and we have to realize that just the mere action of asking what's going to happen in the future could potentially start to alter your course. So I do, when I ask for a future projection, my intent and my prayer is, give me the best outcome for the client, whatever serves the highest good of that client. And so out of all the potential futures, I tap into the best one. And so I do have to give them, a very specific instruction as in terms of, what they need to do, what choices they need to make, or what they need to maintain in order to arrive to that potential outcome. And the timeline will also vary because of those choices and other factors that are involved. So future projections are something that really does require a lot of education. So I do feel like for any of those that are providing that service, that they should really do some education for their clients, so that it's not just because future projections do divide to two general categories. One is fate, scripted outcomes, that the kinds that you can never avoid. No matter what you do, it's going to happen. It's like JFK's or assassination, or Jesus Christ's crucifixion, or Martin Luther King's assassination. Those things has to happen, And then there are changeable futures, that fluctuate constantly with every choice we make.
Well, you said you go into your readings with intent. Is it also important for the person who's having the reading to set their intention before their reading?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, it is a collaborative process. You can put yourself in front of a most powerful seer or a psychic. But if your mind is closed and if you want to argue with every answer, then, you're not going to benefit from it.
I always wonder why people who do that go to a psychic. Like, why are you wasting your money, your time, their time to be combative? It's odd. Why do you think people do that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot. Oftentimes, it's pride. Especially if the reading doesn't. Sometimes it hits some of the most sorest wounds. It opens up wounds that they didn't expect. I got a couple of negative reactions from a client when they came in expecting a great message, and I had to give them a very poignant, but also very painful message to hear. And, suddenly, they changed their tone and kind of began to criticize about my own reading. And I understand, it's not easy to hear from someone that you don't even know, to touch in areas of their lives that they didn't even ask to be touched. But the spirit was really, really strongly compelling me to say, you need to address this thing about this person. And so, yeah, it's not always easy to hear. I do think that the moment you step into that session and the session is engaged, I believe that that's because they're both guided to be there, together. And if I'm not meant to, I always say in my introduction that if I don't get anything in the first 15 minutes, then I will close the session, because it just means that you are meant to receive your counsel or advice from someone else. So, yeah, I think it's important to go with the guidance, flow of the guidance.
Well, one of the things also that you and I have talked about before, it's maintaining the outcome. What does that mean exactly? Well,
I think that when I see certain outcomes, based off of the questions the clients are asking, it is a very one possible thread of many potential futures that exist. And I think that, you go into the whole realm of, parallel realities and such. But when I see a certain outcome, there is definitely certain specific instructions or certain steps that they need to take or maintain in order to get there. If it's a certain wonderful outcome that I see for their career, now if it's specific about certain events that may happen, that may not necessarily always hinge on their action. It may happen simply just by going with the flow. But there are certain successes that or certain celebrations that I see for certain clients that only happens if they maintain a certain path or choice. And at that point, I'd have to give them specific instructions. You really do need to maintain regularity about this, or, whether it's meditation or a certain diet or certain routine in order to maintain that course of action, or that path. So, yeah, there are certain things, certain outcomes that you have to be mindful of staying on that path in order to manifest that outcome.
I've talked about this with a lot of different psychics about meditating, calming the mind. But, for me, I live here in New York. And we are like a 24/7. You know what I mean? Our mind doesn't shut up. I go to bed. I'm like, really, stop now. It's time to go to bed. But your mind doesn't shut up. For me to calm down, I get on the elliptical. I have to do something very physical to get my body to be quiet. So I personally find it super duper hard to meditate, but I know how important it is in life. So how do you get people like me, the busy people, to be able to take 5 minutes of their life to shut everything down?
I'm very much like you, and what I have learned is that a lot of people do misunderstand about what meditation is. Meditation is a moment that you give yourself where you shut down. You give yourself a state of stillness, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sit still and have your eyes closed and be chanting Om. I do believe in mobile meditation or active meditation as well. It's anything that person can engage where they can put their body into automation, whether it's cycling, running, washing dishes, or vacuuming. There are moments where we try to remember things and we can't remember because we're trying to remember. And then we just get caught up in washing dishes or doing something mindless. And suddenly we retrieve that memory. And that's because at that point, that our mind reached a state of stillness where we can allow information to come in, to receive. And so any moment where you can achieve that is a state of meditation, really. But meditation is something that you do consciously or intentionally. So if you wanted to meditate, but you feel like me, where we're active and we don't really like to sit still, well, then that's okay. We can just take a drive, take a walk, soak in a bath, something that allows us to unwind, something that allows us to be in automated motion, but still have the intent of meditation. Then we can have a very similar or the same meditative experience as, sitting on a mountaintop and just with our eyes closed and chanting.
So I know your mother still to this day doesn't know what you do. And at 80 something, I'm sure she doesn't have to, but you know what I mean? But
it's true. Yes.
Does the rest of the family want you to counsel them or help them? And how do you feel about doing that?
Actually, none of my blood family know what I do.
None of them?
None of them.
Not even the younger ones?
My nephew may have caught on to it because he was connected to my Facebook, but I'm not connected to any of my blood family on social media. And I think my nephew unfriended me because he found out that what I do, because he's very devout Christian too, Mm-hmm. So they don't know. And I think that my mom would probably have an exorcism if she found out that I do what I do. My mom couldn't even believe that my dad visited me, from the other side. And I was trying to soften the blow by just saying, oh, I saw dad in a dream, which isn't true. I had a medium do it for me. But, I just said like, oh, dad visited me in a dream. And my mom's like, there's no way dad could visit you in a dream. He's in heaven. He's with God already, kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, I cannot go in any further than this in this arena.
Right. That's why I brought up the cultural things in the beginning. And, I find it so weird because whatever religion you are, it's cool. However you decide to pray or what you feel is best for you. And I find it horrible that we're also divided in that. You know what I mean? One person can't believe in that. One person can't believe in that. We don't have to like the same thing. We all didn't choose the same president. We don't have to like the same president. Well, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like we're all allowed to have our opinions, but especially for other countries, I know it must be very difficult for you. So does this sadden you that you can't have contact?
I understand. And I observe my mom and I know that for her, the Christian faith has served her very well. It healed her. It helped her to, regain her strength in many ways. And so I don't ever want to take that away from her. And I'm, before when I was more younger and I was in the church with her, I argued about every biblical aspect and we just argued constantly. But, I think that what part of the evolution or the consciousness awareness or ascension thereof is that you begin to realize that everyone has their own journey and there is no need to correct or judge anyone, that you allow and respect everyone to have their process and in their own way. You just always need to figure out how you can contribute to the elevation of the world around you in your own way as well.
Right. So can you read yourself? Do you have information coming in about yourself, or are you like most psychics where your emotion or whatever gets into it, so you have to seek other person's counsel?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge for most intuitives, I would say. Friends, family, yourself, whenever you have attachment, that's definitely tough, It's like when I'm writing a song, when I write a song for myself, I usually don't like the song. And then when I write it for someone else, I love listening to it all over and over again. And I think the difference between the two is just the attachment and detachment. And I always say that attachment and detachment is not connection and disconnection. They're both connection. It's just that attachment is connection with conditional love and detachment is connection with unconditional love. And I think that you need to be in a state of detachment with anything that you really want to get the full view on. And that's very difficult when it comes to myself, if
all of us. Oh my God, please.
Yeah.
I cry at Hallmark commercials. I would be the worst psychic ever. I'd be like crying and everything would be an emotional, horrific thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, because, even when sometimes I give reading to a friend and I do have to really be aware. I do go through a process of detachment, and I'm also very, very aware when I infuse my own personal opinion about that friend, or if it's really an intuitive message that came through.
Right. Well, I know you're a musician, love music, and music raises the vibration.
Yes.
And I think people need to really realize how important it is to have your vibration high, because with all the stuff that goes on in the world and in your life and you get just mucked down, it really lowers your vibration. It actually stops things from coming to you. Isn't that true?
That's very, very true. Yes.
So what would you suggest if people want to raise their vibration every day? Would it be playing music, or are there other things that they can do to keep that vibration high and stay out of all this mucky low energy?
Absolutely. I think that, we all have been conditioned, especially men, but, overall, we've been conditioned to really underestimate or dismiss emotion and our feelings. And I think that, our bliss says a lot about our, internal navigational system. So whatever really excites you, you should always pursue it. If you want to look for an answer in your life, or if you want to relieve stress, or if you want to invite healing come into your life, the best thing to do, if you don't have any specific guidance about it, is to really seek what you're excited about. Dancing, exercising, or laughing to a movie. Laughter is a great medicine and a great way to raise your vibration as well. For me, yes, music and staying in the state of creativity, not only helps to raise my vibration, but also helps to maintain my intuitive connection, because there's a lot of improvisation and ad lib in music, which is all about following your intuition. So anything that helps you to raise your vibration in the sense of emotion, like excitement or bliss, is very, very helpful. So I would say the general advice is follow your bliss, follow your excitement.
Well, Shiro, I'd like to thank you so much for being on the show. If you'd like to book a reading with Shiro or find out more about him, go to www.guidedsoulsolutions.com. And also, don't forget to check out our website for our monthly Psychics of the Month and also our group sessions. And remember, you create your life, you create your future. This is Alicia Bowling with Beyond Logic.